Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Whispering Pines, EVP evidence you won't believe. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1, The Haunted House. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up, I scoffed the idea of haunted houses and paranormal phenomena. So, when I received the letter informing me that I had inherited an old mansion nestled deep within the woods, I dismissed the rumors of it being haunted without a second thought. After all, there had to be a logical explanation for everything, right? My name is Alex, and I prided myself on being a skeptic. But as I stood before the wrought iron gates of Whispering Pines, a chill crept up my spine that I couldn't shake off. The mansion loomed before me, its imposing facade obscured by the thick canopy of trees that surrounded it. The air seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Ignoring the unsettling feeling in the pit of my stomach, I pushed open the gates and made my way up the winding path that led to the front door. The mansion, though weathered and worn with age, still retained an air of grandeur. Its Gothic architecture spoke of a bygone era, a time when Whispering Pines was undoubtedly a place of opulence and splendor. I reached out a trembling hand and grasped the ornate brass knocker, rapping it against the heavy wooden door. The sound echoed through the stillness of the forest, reverberating off the ancient trees that surrounded me. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, and I wondered if perhaps the mansion was as deserted as it appeared. But then, with a groan of protest, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit foyer beyond. A shiver ran down my spine as I stepped over the threshold, the musty scent of old wood and decay filling my nostrils. The air felt heavy, as though laden with secrets long forgotten. I moved further into the mansion, my footsteps echoing off the marble floors as I explored its cavernous halls. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that streamed through the stained glass windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Despite my attempts to remain rational, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I made my way through the mansion, I couldn't help but notice the subtle signs of neglect that marred its once grand interior. The wallpaper was peeling, the furniture draped in dusty sheets, and cobwebs clung to the corners of every room. It was clear that Whispering Pines had been abandoned for years, left to decay in the depths of the forest. But as I rounded a corner and came face to face with a portrait hanging on the wall, I froze in horror. The painting depicted a family, their faces twisted in expressions of agony and despair. There was something unnerving about the way their eyes seemed to follow me, as though they were alive and watching my every move. I tore my gaze away from the painting and continued on, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild, that there was a perfectly logical explanation for everything I was experiencing. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong with Whispering Pines. As I reached the end of the hallway, I came to a set of grand double doors that stood slightly ajar. A cold draft wafted through the crack, sending a shiver down my spine. With a trembling hand, I pushed the doors open and stepped into the darkness beyond. And that's when I heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible above the creaking of the floorboards and the rustling of the leaves outside. It seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, filling the air with a sense of dread that I couldn't explain. I felt a chill run down my spine as the words echoed in my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. "Welcome home, Alex," the voice whispered, and I knew then that I was not alone in Whispering Pines. And whatever lurked within its walls was far from friendly. Chapter 2, Unexplained Phenomena. The eerie whisper lingered in my mind long after I'd fled the darkness of the mansion's interior. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, that there was a logical explanation for everything I had experienced. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong with Whispering Pines. As the days passed, I found myself drawn back to the mansion, unable to shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at my insides. Strange occurrences became a regular part of my daily life, from flickering lights to inexplicable drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. Each night, I would lie awake in bed, listening to the whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. Despite my skepticism, I couldn't deny the overwhelming sense of dread that permeated the air around Whispering Pines. It was as though the mansion itself was alive, its dark secrets lurking just beneath the surface. And try as I might to ignore it, I knew that I had to confront the truth head-on. With a sense of trepidation, I began to delve into the history of Whispering Pines, determined to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its walls. I spent hours poring over old newspapers and dusty archives, piecing together the puzzle of its past. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Whispering Pines had once been a thriving estate, owned by a wealthy family with a dark reputation. Rumors swirled of occult practices and mysterious disappearances, whispers of a curse that had befallen the land. It seemed that every generation that had called Whispering Pines home had been plagued by tragedy and misfortune. As I delved deeper into the history of the mansion, I began to understand the true nature of the darkness that lurked within its walls. There were tales of restless spirits and vengeful ghosts, of voices heard in the dead of night and figures glimpsed in the shadows. But still, I refused to believe. I clung to my skepticism like a lifeline, desperate to find a rational explanation for the inexplicable phenomena that plagued me. But the more I learned, the more I began to question everything I thought I knew. One night, as I sat alone in the dimly lit library, poring over ancient tomes and crumbling manuscripts, I heard it again. The whisper, soft and insistent, seemed to come from all around me, enveloping me in its icy embrace. I felt a chill run down my spine as the words echoed in my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. "Find me, Alex," the voice whispered, and I knew then that I could no longer deny the truth. Whatever haunted Whispering Pines was calling out to me, beckoning me into the darkness with promises of answers and revelations. And try as I might to resist, I knew that I had no choice but to answer its call. For the secrets of Whispering Pines were mine to uncover, no matter the cost. Chapter 3: The Ghost Hunters. The whispered voices of Whispering Pines had haunted me for days, their ethereal presence growing ever more insistent. Despite my best efforts to ignore them, I found myself drawn back to the mansion, my curiosity outweighing my fear. But I knew that I couldn't face whatever lurked within its walls alone. That's when I heard about the Ghost Hunters. A group of paranormal investigators had come to town, drawn by the rumors surrounding Whispering Pines. They were a motley crew, with an eclectic mix of gadgets and gizmos that promised to uncover the truth behind the mansion's dark past. And as much as I wanted to scoff at their beliefs, I couldn't deny the desperation gnawing at my insides. I found them one evening, huddled around a table in the back of a dingy diner on the outskirts of town. They were deep in conversation, their voices hushed as they discussed their latest case. As I approached, they turned to look at me, their eyes gleaming with excitement. "You must be Alex," said a tall man with a grizzled beard, extending a hand in greeting. "We've heard all about your inheritance." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Perhaps these ghost hunters could help me make sense of the strange occurrences that plagued Whispering Pines. "We'd be happy to help," said another member of the group, a woman with piercing blue eyes. "But first, we'll need to gather some evidence." And so we set to work. Together, we gathered an arsenal of equipment, from electromagnetic field detectors to infrared cameras. We armed ourselves with voice recorders and spirit boxes, ready to capture any evidence of the supernatural that we might encounter. Despite my skepticism, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building within me as we prepared to embark on our investigation. As night fell, we made our way to Whispering Pines, the darkness of the forest closing in around us like a suffocating blanket. The mansion loomed before us, its shadowy silhouette casting a sense of foreboding over the landscape. But we pressed on, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Inside the mansion, we split up into teams, each armed with our own set of equipment. We moved cautiously through the dimly lit halls, our senses on high alert for any sign of paranormal activity. The air seemed to crackle with energy, the weight of centuries of darkness pressing down upon us. It wasn't long before we began to experience strange phenomena. Lights flickered, and shadows danced along the walls, their movements unbidden and unnatural. Cold spots materialized out of nowhere, sending shivers down our spines as we moved through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. But it was the whispers that chilled me to the bone. They seemed to follow us wherever we went, their voices soft and insistent as they echoed through the darkness. We captured them on our voice recorders, their words barely audible above the creaking of the floorboards and the rustling of the leaves outside. It was as though the very walls themselves were alive with the presence of the supernatural. And yet, despite the overwhelming evidence before me, I couldn't shake the feeling of doubt that lingered in the back of my mind. Was it possible that all of this was just an elaborate hoax, a figment of my overactive imagination? Or was there truly something malevolent lurking within the depths of Whispering Pines? As we gathered our equipment and prepared to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease settle over me. The whispers still lingered in my mind, their words haunting me long after we had left the mansion behind. And though I tried to push them away, I knew that they would stay with me forever, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. Chapter 4. Voices from Beyond. The investigation into Whispering Pines had taken a dark turn. Despite my initial skepticism, the evidence gathered by the ghost hunters was undeniable. Mysterious voices and messages from beyond the grave echoed through the halls of the mansion, sending shivers down our spines as we listened to the recordings. It was during one of our EVP electronic voice phenomenon sessions that things truly took a sinister turn. We gathered in the grand hall of Whispering Pines, our equipment at the ready as we prepared to make contact with whatever dwelled within its walls. The air crackled with tension as we waited in silence, our breath hanging in the stillness of the night. And then it began. Soft whispers filled the room, their voices barely audible above the hum of the equipment. We listened intently as the voices grew louder, their words forming a chilling message that sent a shiver down my spine. "Find me, Alex," they whispered, and I felt a cold dread settle over me. It was as though the spirits were calling out to me, beckoning me into the darkness with promises of answers and revelations. But as the session continued, the voices grew more insistent, their words taking on a menacing tone that sent a chill down my spine. It was as though they were angry, their spectral forms lashing out at us from beyond the grave. I felt a sense of unease settle over me as I listened to the recordings, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. It was clear that whatever haunted Whispering Pines was not content to remain hidden in the shadows. It wanted something from us, something that I couldn't begin to comprehend. As the night wore on, I became increasingly disturbed by the messages we were receiving. They seemed to be directed at me, as though the spirits knew of my presence within the mansion's walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were following my every move. But try as I might to ignore them, the voices haunted me wherever I went. They followed me in my dreams, their whispered warnings echoing through the darkness of my subconscious. I found myself growing increasingly paranoid, jumping at the slightest sound and constantly looking over my shoulder. And yet, despite my fear, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the voices than met the eye. They seemed to be trying to tell me something, to warn me of a danger that lurked just beyond the edges of my understanding. As I listened to the recordings, I couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency building within me. Whatever secrets Whispering Pines held, they were far darker and more sinister than I could have ever imagined. And try as I might to resist, I knew that I had no choice but to confront the truth head-on, no matter the cost. Chapter 5. The Entity Revealed. The air in the grand hall of Whispering Pines was heavy with anticipation as we prepared for another EVP session. Despite the growing sense of unease that hung over us like a shroud, we were determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious voices that haunted the mansion's halls. As we sat in a circle, our hands poised over the voice recorders, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were treading on dangerous ground, that whatever dwelled within Whispering Pines was far more sinister than we had ever imagined. And then it happened. A voice, clear and distinct, cut through the silence like a knife. It seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, filling the room with its icy presence. I felt a chill run down my spine as the words echoed in my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. "I am the darkness," the voice whispered, its words dripping with malice. "I am the entity that dwells within Whispering Pines." I exchanged a horrified glance with the other members of the group, their faces pale with shock. It was clear that we had stumbled upon something far more sinister than we had ever anticipated. Whatever haunted Whispering Pines was no mere ghost or restless spirit. It was something far more malevolent, something that had been lurking in the shadows for centuries. As the realization dawned on us, a sense of dread settled over the room like a fog. We were in the presence of something ancient and powerful, something that could not be reasoned with or appeased. And try as we might to deny it, we knew that we were in grave danger. But there was no time for fear. We had awakened something dark and sinister, and now we had to find a way to banish it before it was too late. With a sense of grim determination, we set to work, scouring the ancient texts and manuscripts in search of a solution. It wasn't long before we uncovered a ritual, a powerful incantation that promised to banish the entity from Whispering Pines once and for all. But as we prepared to perform the ritual, a sense of unease settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were playing with forces far beyond our understanding, that the consequences of our actions would be dire. But it was too late to turn back now. With a sense of trepidation, we gathered our supplies and made our way to the heart of the mansion where the entity's presence was strongest. As we began to chant the incantation, a sense of power surged through the room, filling the air with its palpable presence. And then, with a deafening roar, the entity was banished from Whispering Pines, its malevolent presence fading into the darkness. We breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that we had succeeded in our quest to rid the mansion of its dark curse. But as we made our way out of Whispering Pines, I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity's presence still lingered, its malevolence tainting the very air around us. And though we had banished it from the mansion, I knew that its dark legacy would haunt me forever. Chapter 6. The Dark History. In the aftermath of banishing the malevolent entity from Whispering Pines, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy fog. Despite our success, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the mansion's dark past than we had uncovered. And so, fueled by a newfound determination, I set out to uncover the truth. Armed with the knowledge gained from our research and exploration, I delved deeper into the history of Whispering Pines. I spent hours poring over ancient texts and crumbling manuscripts, piecing together the puzzle of its past. And what I discovered sent a chill down my spine. Whispering Pines had once been a place of darkness and despair, its halls haunted by the echoes of tragedy and loss. It had been owned by a man named Nathaniel Blackwood, a wealthy aristocrat with a penchant for the occult. Rumors swirled of his dabblings in dark magic and forbidden rituals, of sacrifices made in the name of power and immortality. As I delved deeper into Nathaniel's past, I uncovered a tale of betrayal and revenge that sent shivers down my spine. It seemed that he had been betrayed by those closest to him, his own family turning against him in a bid for power. And in his rage, he had unleashed a dark force that had haunted Whispering Pines ever since. But it wasn't just Nathaniel's past that haunted me. There were tales of other tragedies that had befallen the mansion over the years, each one more sinister than the last. It seemed that Whispering Pines was cursed, its very foundations tainted by the blood of those who had suffered within its walls. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, a sense of dread settled over me. It was clear that the entity we had banished from Whispering Pines was seeking revenge for past wrongs, its anger fueled by centuries of pain and suffering. And try as we might to deny it, we were the ones who had awakened it from its slumber. But even as I grappled with the weight of the truth, I knew that we couldn't let the darkness win. We had banished the entity once before, and we could do it again. Armed with the knowledge of Whispering Pines' dark history, we set out to confront the entity once and for all, determined to put an end to its reign of terror once and for all. But as we prepared for the final showdown, I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity's power was growing stronger with each passing moment. And though we had uncovered the truth behind Whispering Pines' dark past, I feared that it might already be too late to stop the darkness from consuming us all. Chapter 7. Confronting the Entity. Armed with the knowledge we had uncovered about Whispering Pines' dark history, we knew that confronting the entity would be our greatest challenge yet. As we gathered our courage and prepared to face the malevolent force that had haunted the mansion for centuries, a sense of dread settled over us like a heavy blanket. We ventured into the heart of Whispering Pines, the air thick with tension as we made our way through the dimly lit halls. The mansion seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, its very walls alive with the presence of the entity that dwelled within. But despite the fear that gnawed at our insides, we pressed on, determined to uncover the truth no matter the cost. As we reached the grand hall, where the entity's presence was strongest, a sense of foreboding settled over us. We could feel its malevolent gaze upon us, its dark power radiating from every corner of the room. But we refused to be intimidated. We had come too far to turn back now. With a sense of grim determination, we began to communicate with the entity, using the knowledge we had gleaned from our research to understand its motives. We spoke to it in hushed tones, our voices trembling with fear as we attempted to reason with the dark force that lurked within Whispering Pines. But as we attempted to communicate with the entity, its power grew stronger, its malevolence seeping into the very fabric of our reality. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unnatural and unsettling. The air crackled with energy, the very atmosphere alive with the presence of the supernatural. We struggled to maintain control of the situation, our minds reeling from the onslaught of dark energy that surrounded us. But despite our best efforts, the entity seemed to be one step ahead of us, its power overwhelming and unstoppable. As the confrontation reached its climax, I could feel my resolve wavering. The entity's dark presence loomed over us like a shadow, its malevolent gaze boring into our souls. But despite the fear that threatened to consume me, I refused to back down. We had come too far to let the darkness win. With a final burst of courage, we unleashed the full force of our combined willpower against the entity, channeling our energy into a powerful incantation that banished it from Whispering Pines once and for all. As the last echoes of the ritual faded into the darkness, a sense of peace settled over the mansion, its dark curse finally broken. But as we made our way out of Whispering Pines, I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity's presence still lingered, its malevolence tainting the very air around us. And though we had banished it from the mansion, I knew that its dark legacy would haunt me forever. Chapter 8. A Desperate Escape. The oppressive atmosphere of Whispering Pines seemed to weigh heavier upon us as the entity's malevolence intensified. Despite our attempts to confront it head-on, we found ourselves overwhelmed by its dark power. Every step we took felt like wading through molasses, our movements sluggish and labored, as if the very air itself conspired against us. As the darkness of the mansion closed in around us, a sense of desperation gnawed at the edges of my mind. We had come here seeking answers, hoping to banish the entity that haunted Whispering Pines once and for all. But now, faced with its overwhelming presence, I knew that our only hope lay in escape. With a sense of urgency, we began to make our way through the labyrinthine halls of the mansion, our hearts pounding in our chests as we sought a way out. But at every turn, we were met with obstacles and terrifying encounters that seemed determined to keep us trapped within its grasp. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements unnaturally fluid and sinuous. Strange whispers echoed through the darkness, their voices taunting and mocking us as we stumbled blindly through the maze of corridors. It was as though the very mansion itself had come alive, its dark heart pulsing with malevolent energy. But still, we pressed on, driven by a desperate need to escape the horrors that lurked within Whispering Pines. With each passing moment, the entity's power seemed to grow stronger, its presence looming over us like a malevolent specter. We knew that we were running out of time, that if we didn't find a way out soon, we would be lost to the darkness forever. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, we stumbled upon a hidden passageway concealed behind a crumbling tapestry. With a sense of relief, we made our way through the narrow corridor, our footsteps echoing off the damp stone walls as we raced towards freedom. But our escape was not to be easy. As we emerged from the passageway, we found ourselves confronted by a horde of spectral figures, their eyes burning with hatred as they advanced upon us. We fought desperately against the tide, our weapons clashing against their ethereal forms as we struggled to break free. But the entity's influence was too strong, its power overwhelming us as we fought tooth and nail for our lives. With each passing moment, our strength waned, our resolve crumbling under the weight of its malevolence. It seemed as though all was lost, that we would be consumed by the darkness that surrounded us. And then, just when it seemed that we could fight no longer, a blinding light filled the room, banishing the shadows and driving back the entity's dark influence. With a sense of awe, we watched as the mansion began to crumble around us, its walls crumbling to dust as the entity's hold over Whispering Pines was finally broken. With a final burst of strength, we made our escape, racing through the crumbling ruins of the mansion as it collapsed around us. And as we emerged into the light of the dawn, I knew that we had finally escaped the darkness that had haunted us for so long. But though Whispering Pines lay in ruins, its dark legacy would live on in our memories forever. And as we made our way back to civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity's malevolence still lingered, waiting patiently in the shadows for its next victims. Chapter 9: Betrayal and Sacrifice. As we emerged from the ruins of Whispering Pines, a sense of relief washed over us like a wave. We had escaped the darkness that had threatened to consume us, but the horrors we had witnessed lingered in the recesses of our minds, haunting us like a ghost. But our reprieve was short-lived. As we made our way back to civilization, tensions within the group began to rise, fueled by fear and paranoia. The events at Whispering Pines had taken a toll on us all, and now, faced with the harsh reality of our situation, cracks began to form in our fragile alliance. It started with whispered accusations and furtive glances, each member of the group casting suspicion upon the others. Paranoia took hold, twisting our perceptions until we could no longer trust even those closest to us. Friendships that had once been unshakable crumbled beneath the weight of our doubts and insecurities. And then, in the darkness of the night, betrayal reared its ugly head. I awoke to find myself alone, the rest of the group nowhere to be seen. Panic surged through me as I realized that I had been abandoned, left to fend for myself in the wilderness with no one to rely on but my own wits. But as I stumbled through the darkness, I soon realized that I was not alone. Shadows danced along the edges of my vision, their movements fluid and sinuous as they closed in around me. Fear gripped me like a vice as I realized that something was stalking me, something far more sinister than anything I had encountered at Whispering Pines. With a sense of desperation, I fought to keep the darkness at bay, my heart pounding in my chest as I struggled to make sense of the chaos that surrounded me. But with each passing moment, the shadows grew stronger, their malevolent presence threatening to consume me whole. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a figure emerged from the darkness, their face shrouded in shadow. It was one of the members of the group, their eyes burning with a fierce determination as they reached out a hand to me. "Come with me," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. "There's still time to make it out alive." With a sense of relief, I took their hand, allowing them to lead me to safety. But as we made our way through the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over me. Betrayal had torn us apart, and now, faced with the harsh reality of our situation, I knew that sacrifice was inevitable if we were to survive. And as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I realized that I would do whatever it took to make it out alive, even if it meant sacrificing everything I held dear. For in the end, the darkness had taught me one thing above all else. In a world consumed by fear and paranoia, betrayal was the only certainty. Chapter 10: The Final Showdown. The air crackled with tension as we stood on the precipice of the final confrontation. The remaining survivors, a ragtag group of weary souls, gathered together in the crumbling ruins of Whispering Pines, our hearts heavy with the weight of our impending battle. We knew that this would be our last chance to rid the mansion of the malevolent entity that had haunted us for so long. Armed with whatever weapons we could scrounge together, we prepared to make our stand. The air was thick with anticipation as we awaited the arrival of our enemy, our senses on high alert for any sign of its approach. It was as though the very fabric of reality itself held its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash between light and darkness. And then, with a deafening roar, the entity revealed itself, its form looming large against the backdrop of the crumbling mansion. It was a monstrous creature, its features twisted and contorted with rage as it advanced upon us with a terrifying grace. With a sense of grim determination, we launched ourselves into battle, our weapons clashing against the entity's dark form as we fought tooth and nail for our lives. Every blow landed with a resounding impact, sending shockwaves rippling through the air as we struggled to maintain our ground. But the entity was powerful, far more powerful than we had ever anticipated. With each passing moment, its dark influence grew stronger, threatening to overwhelm us with its malevolent energy. We fought with all our might, our resolve unyielding even in the face of certain death. As the battle raged on, I found myself consumed by a sense of desperation. Doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me with its suffocating embrace. But I knew that I could not falter, that I had to stand strong in the face of adversity if we were to have any hope of emerging victorious. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a glimmer of light pierced the darkness, illuminating the battlefield with its radiant glow. With a sense of awe, we watched as the entity faltered, its dark form quivering with uncertainty as the light surrounded it. With a final burst of strength, we launched ourselves into one last assault, our weapons striking true against the entity's dark heart. And as the light consumed it, banishing it from Whispering Pines once and for all, I knew that we had emerged victorious. But though the battle was won, the cost had been high. Many had fallen in the fight against the darkness, their sacrifices not in vain, but forever etched into the fabric of our memories. And as we stood amidst the ruins of Whispering Pines, I knew that we would carry their memory with us, always, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming adversity. Chapter 11: Closure and Redemption. The aftermath of the harrowing ordeal at Whispering Pines left us all shaken to our cores. As the dust settled and the sun rose over the horizon, we found ourselves faced with the daunting task of coming to terms with our experiences and finding closure in the wake of the haunting. We gathered together in the dim light of dawn, our faces drawn and weary from the events of the previous night. The mansion lay in ruins behind us, a stark reminder of the darkness that had once lurked within its walls. But despite the destruction, there was a sense of relief in the air, a feeling that we had finally vanquished the malevolent entity that had haunted us for so long. As we sat in silence, the gravity of what we had endured began to sink in. Tensions that had simmered beneath the surface during our time at Whispering Pines rose to the forefront, fueled by fear and paranoia. It was clear that the events of the past few days had taken their toll on us all, leaving us raw and vulnerable in their wake. But amidst the chaos, there was also a sense of unity, a bond forged in the crucible of adversity. We leaned on one another for support, finding solace in the shared understanding of what we had been through. And as the hours passed, we began to open up to one another, sharing our fears and insecurities in a way that we never had before. For me, the experience had been a wake-up call, forcing me to confront my own doubts and insecurities head-on. I had always prided myself on being a skeptic, on relying solely on logic and reason to explain the world around me. But Whispering Pines had shattered that illusion, forcing me to confront the reality of the supernatural in a way that I could never have imagined. As I sat with the others, I realized that I had been given a second chance, a chance to embrace the unknown and to learn from the mistakes of the past. I vowed to never forget the lessons that I had learned at Whispering Pines, to always respect the power of the unknown and to never take anything for granted again. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its golden light over the ruins of Whispering Pines, I knew that we had finally found closure. Though the scars of our ordeal would remain with us forever, we had emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient than before. And as we made our way back to civilization, I knew that we would carry the memory of Whispering Pines with us always, a testament to the power